It's about 2 weeks from the NBA draft. So, I'm in the process of getting together my final NBA draft big board. Before we do that, I'm going to have a draft analyst pick it apart and tell me I'm dumb. Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and it's not the big sartorialist that is the Papa Bear of menswear. It's me. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com. You can find me on Twitter as always, at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Thank you also for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free. We're available for you to double bang on all platforms. Thumb it up, comments, 5 stars. You know what to do. NBA Live draft show is coming up. Put out the YouTube landing page for that yesterday. June 26th, 8 p.m. is the start of the draft. That's when we'll go live. So there'll be a show there. Obviously, I won't have live footage because I'm not ESPN, but we'll be talking about everything as it happens, analyzing stuff as it goes down, interacting with chat. And yeah, you won't have idiotic Kendrick Perkins NBA player comps or the insane discussions of Jay Billis and things like that. We'll hopefully do things a little bit better. But what we are going to do is I've put together my big board. We're 72 deep on that at the moment. That is going to expand out further. And I'll reveal version 1 of my big board tomorrow. But I've given a sneak peek to Matt Powers of Swish Theory. And he's going to come on. He's going to tell me the things that he disagrees with on that big board. And we're going to hash it out on this show. So we might as well get Matt in here. And let's do it. Welcome back to the show, Matt Powers. How are you, mate?
Hey, doing great, Josh. Thanks for having me here.
It's good to have you back on. You're on the show last year talking draft, and we've gone through over the past 2-3 weeks a bunch of different NBA draft prospects, covered the majority of the guys. We're probably going to go in the top, at least say 55. Gone through all those individual prospects. So yeah, I've done the basis of my initial part of the work. I've spoken to a bunch of draft analysts on all of these different prospects, and I've put together an NBA draft big board. And then I wanted someone to have a look at it and say, well, Josh, I think you're wrong on these sort of things. So Matt, I went to you and said, hey, can you have a look at this? And then let's just talk about the things that I'm wrong. But first of all, tell us what you do. So you're over at Swish Theory. What sort of draft work you're doing at the moment that people can go check out some of your work? And then we'll get into talking about how bad my work is.
Yeah, sure. At Swish, we have a bunch of pieces, a lot of guys writing about their draft philosophy usually. But we did release our top 60 big board. I'll have my own top 40 reports coming out in a couple weeks. So yeah, that's the main stuff at theswishtheory.com.
Go check out all the stuff at Swish Theory. Number one, I love the presentation, the design of the site. I've said that last time as well. It looks fantastic, and all the information is really good as well. And it's always worth getting all of your information. I think, Matt, maybe you'll have opinions on this as well. But I think if you're getting as many different sort of opinions on prospects as you can, it enables you to form not necessarily a strong opinion, but you get the idea of like ways that this can go or bits that are uncertain. Like this guy really likes this part of this player's game, and this analyst likes this part, and so all these things might work, but they might not work, and there's clear debate about this guy's, say, shooting or finishing skills. So you go, well, that's going to be something that we really have to monitor closely. So I think getting as many different information sources in is important when evaluating prospects.
Yeah, absolutely. We have, I think, anywhere from 9 to 12 active draft analysts at Swish Theory who are kind of shooting things back and forth. So yeah, it's good to get a variety of opinions for sure.
So I wanted to get your opinion on my big board. Now I've put this together. I'm going to be making some changes, as just more information comes to light. But there are a couple of guys that you were like, I think, Josh, that you might be a little bit too high on these players. And we'll just start with the guy that I do have up at number 1 on the board. And I've got Alex Sarr at number 1 on the board. I've had Alex Sarr at number 1 basically on my board since the beginning of the NBA season. It hasn't really moved from there. But you don't. So, why is this something that you look at and go, I'm not sure about Sarr at 1? Now, obviously, Sarr at 1 is not a controversial statement. There's a lot of people that have that. There's also a lot of people that don't. So where are you at with Alex Sarr, and what could me and other people who have him as this clear number 1 be missing?
Yeah, I really like Sarr. Just, again, not as that clear number 1. I think he has some obvious strengths to his game. He's incredibly mobile. He's exactly the type of, talk about scheme versatile bigs. He's someone that you can take away from the basket on defense and really hang in on switches and excel on switches, provide some rim protection in addition to that. But for me, I don't see the route to offensive dominance in any way, or even it could be a while for him to get even above average offensive output. And I don't see the kind of interior dominance. He's good at, blocking shots and switching and stuff like that, but he's not a great rebounder. He's kind of I think his rebound numbers are even slightly worse than Jaren Jackson's in college. So it's just not, he won't be able to play the 5, I think, at all.
Yeah, that's not good.
Or at least, yeah. And if he's then just going to be a wing on offense, then that kind of removes a lot of that scheme flexibility that you're excited about to begin with. I don't know if I buy his shot necessarily. I think it's it looks okay, but again, not a strength for a wing, He's shown some cool passing flashes and stuff like that, but again, I don't know if it's stuff that you can rely on and really build around significantly.
So, well, let's ask the question then. If you think that having Sarr at 1 is too high, who do you have at number 1?
I'm going very controversial this year since it's so wide open. But I actually have someone that you're very low on, number 1, and that's Zach Edey.
Wow. Okay.
I think I'm the only one out on that island right now.
We'll talk Edey later. That's okay. I didn't know you had him at number 1. That is okay. That is really interesting. Back to Sarr. Mm-hmm. All right. I do understand. He's that guy that I think a lot of people, and this will include me, where you go, okay, he's the player that played as a wing growing up, growth spurt, 7 foot tall. He's blocking shots. Oh, maybe that is the Anthony Davis path. You can handle. You can play in the perimeter, but you're big enough. You can guard interior. But you're right. Then there does become that can he learn to play in there? Does he rebound? Is he going to be strong enough? I get all those concerns, and it's part of again why the consensus idea around this draft is that it's not that strong. Is because there isn't a standout guy, and there's with every player you can always pick something that's a problem with any prospect in any year. But this year, there's just way too many of those questions, whereas every sort of guy that you can throw up there, it's hard to be right about it. It's also hard to be wrong about it because there's just so many different wild ways that players can work out. How far down do you have an Alex Sarr? Are you just worried that he's going to become he's never even going to develop into a starter level player? Is it that level of concern?
No, I think he could be a starter level player. He's still 5 to 9 range for me. I would be fine taking him in the top 3 if things if you have a very specific fit. I think it's that wide open this year. But I personally would. I think he's okay, right? I think he's an okay prospect. I think I think he has a high chance of being a low end starter just because you want that flexibility out there and that defensive upside is real. But I just don't think I think he has a very low chance of being a top 2 player on a contender, very, very low chance. So I just want someone with more of that upside equity if you're going to swing that high.
I agree that I don't think he can ever be a top 2 player, but I also don't see anyone else in this class who can be, and that's sort of where I can look at him and go, I think he can be a solid 3 and a really strong defensive guy who can ramp up a little bit offensively, but I agree with that. And that's, again, part of the reason where we say about this draft class, or when I say about it, I don't know who that guy is going to be that jumps up into that position that, maybe, if you look, I'm not sure how you even feel about this guy, but if you look at Rob Dillingham in his offense, okay, that's great, but what if he just gets completely cooked on the other end and then the size becomes a problem, and then who cares if you're the number 2 offensive guy, then you're not on the court because you're getting killed all the time on the other end. And that's where all those problems do begin to leak in. We've got more guys to talk about coming up, but today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience is the formula for winning championships. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything that you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. And if eBay Motors was in this draft, I reckon we'd go and pick that at number one, because it's got over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. So you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you are burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts that you need at the prices you want, it is easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to US customers. Okay, so talked about how you think that I am too high on Alex Sarr. Let's stick French here. And there are a couple of guys that when I gave you through my list, you said that I was too high or too low according to how you view it. And they were guys who thought, I'm not actually that high on some of these guys or that low on some of these guys. But when we talk about a player that's probably getting some of the most buzz out of anybody at the moment, it is Tidjane Salaun, who I'm hearing like now people are saying, well, I think he's going to go at number 8. He's not going to escape the top 7. Like he's jumping up and up and up, whereas he sort of was, I guess, not unknown, but no one was really talking about Salaun in that sort of discussion 2 months ago. He's one of the youngest players in this draft, not quite the youngest. I think there's someone that's a little bit younger. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, but there is someone who's like 18 and a half. Oh, it's Ulrich Chomchi, I think. He's a 6'9" forward. He's got some interesting steal numbers over in the French league. He shoots a lot of threes. I thought I was low on him. I've got him, I think, at 13 at the moment on my big board, but there are a lot of people who are jumping him up into that top 10. But where are you at with Salaun? Because he is a player that I don't really know. Like I look at it and go, okay, maybe the size is there, the positionality is there, the age is there, but could be just literally could be like a second round type player when all is said and done. Where are you at with Tidjane Salaun?
Yeah, he looks more like a fringe first round player to me, even in like a draft lacking upside at the top. I think main concern around him is just kind of like his feel on defense in particular. He's like, I see him like losing his man in any like scramble situation. He kind of gets distracted and like overhelps, like just runs after people, like isn't great play recognition. Like I saw him missing like calling out screens, stuff like that. And just, I think when those mistakes kind of add up, it's going to be really hard to find playing time early on in his career as things speed up even greater from the French league. I think it's really easy to bet on threes, steals, and dunks, and he gets a lot of those. So I will never if you're going to bet on just 3 stats, like you can do a lot worse than that. But I know the shot is like okay. He's 34% on catch and shoot threes. His like finishing touch is like not that great. I think 26th percentile on layups. Just that with the feel for the game, I think he could be a little lost on both ends. Still really young. I think there's a lot of like ways he can improve and like prove me wrong. But like right now his driving is like pretty predictable. I don't know. I don't really quite see it with him, honestly.
I thought I was there with you. Like honestly, when I was putting this together and I had him, I snuck him into the back end of the lottery, and I wasn't convinced because of like a lot of those things that you said, like what's he doing on defense half the time. I saw the part of the thing, what are you doing? Like where are you positioning yourself? And then I watch offensively and I go, like it should all be there, but I'm never like, oh, that's the thing. Like that's the thing that's going to be great. Like, oh yeah, you are dangerous as a driver. You're beating everyone with this huge athleticism burst, or you are just an absolute knockdown guy. And I go, Like you got the nice intermediate size, you got okay length, you're shooting okay, you're getting okay steal numbers, but like there's all these concerns. And so I put him at the end of that lottery. But like, okay, so like we can say that you think that I've got him too high, but what do you think of these ideas or even whispers or leaks that your teams are going top 8 and that he's not going to get past the Spurs? Like, what do you make of that sort of an idea?
Yeah, I mean, that seems like, I think there's kind of an aesthetic thing with him. He's like really high energy.
Yes.
He's like really, you want to like him playing. Like he's fun to watch. He has like really long strides. I think he's a top 5 athlete in the class, which shows kind of how I feel about the rest of his game that I still think pretty low of him. But yeah, I think the thing I didn't mention also that really jumps out to me is he like never blocks shots. He has like less than 1 block every 5 games.
Yep.
And at his height, he measured like a true like 6'10", basically. That's just like a major red flag to me. He kind of reminds me of like Jackson Hayes a lot, who's like just very high energy and like does things a lot of times, but just very highly unlikely to be like a high-end starter.
Jackson Hayes is like the big man version of the. We think Torian Prince is a good defender because he moves his head a lot and his hair swishes around. It looks like he's doing a bunch of stuff, but he's actually not. And that's where Jackson Hayes is. He jumps up and down. His hair bounces all over the place, and he's moving here, but like you're moving in the wrong spots, mate. Like what are you doing? And yeah, that's a way. Now, okay. I'll talk two more things on Salaun because we saw the measurements come out from the Adidas camp the other day, and another French wing, Dadier, came out with almost identical measurements to Salaun. Do you prefer Pacome over Tidjane?
That's a good question. I haven't done my deep dive on Dadier yet. Right now I prefer Salaun just because like the tools are so evident right now. I think he's like a much better athlete. But Dadier does have some really nice craft to his game too. So I haven't like ruled him out as a first rounder for me.
If we're going to talk sort of generalized draft rules, I think at the moment over the last few years there's been the G League Ignite taxes. Anyone who seems to come from the G League always seems to fall below the spot that they're expected to go maybe before the season starts. Like that's general. There's like a G League tax. Would you say at the moment that there is a French player, not even a tax, like a rebate? It's like every sort of French guy at the moment just seems to be pushing higher and higher. We're getting this bump from Salaun. Sarr's going at the top. Risacher's up high. You're getting Dadier move into the discussion. Bilal last season. Would you say that there is validity to that? Or are these guys actually like as good as what the sort of push forward for a lot of these players seems to be?
Yeah, I actually didn't realize at first that all three guys I picked out were French. But yeah, I don't know if that's rose-colored glasses right now with just like the shadow of Wemby hanging over everything, or maybe it's my bias right now. Maybe I'm too low, and we'll find out. But yeah, I'm not sure.
I want to transition this into talking about some guys that you are higher on than me, and then we'll get back to one more at the end that you are lower on. But we will, first of all, tell you that today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. So when you are hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. It's not just another job board. It's LinkedIn. There's over 1 billion professionals there. So when you get your job ready to go, and LinkedIn can help you write all the job descriptions and stuff for you over on the site, but it gets out there in front of 1 billion professionals. Getting the right people for your job, for your small business is key because you've got to do so many different things as a small business owner or the hiring manager. You've got so many different tasks you need to do. So you have to get qualified and capable people into those positions so that you know that they're getting handled correctly. And that is where you jump on to LinkedIn Jobs. They've got 2.5 million small businesses as well that are currently using LinkedIn Jobs for hiring, and you can be one of those. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That is linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, so sell me on it. We're talking about a guy that you are higher on than I am. Now, I've got him around the... let me double check where I've got this man. Got him at number 11 at the moment. Donovan Clingan. There are rumors that Atlanta is interested in him at 1, Houston at 3, the Wizards at 2, and I look at that and go, no, what are we doing? I don't get it. I don't understand the appeal of Clingan as a guy that didn't ramp up and play big minutes in college, had the injury this season. I worry about switchability. I worry about offensive spacing. I feel like he's a guy that maybe I can't get 100% of his production, but maybe I can get 90% or 85% with Missy or Holmes or Ware or one of these other centers that you can inevitably get in the 20s. So I've got him at 11. You've obviously got Donovan Clingan much higher. Other people have got him in the top 3. Maybe you're one of those. Sell me on it. What am I wrong on?
Yeah, he's number 3 for me currently. I wouldn't hate Atlanta using number 1 pick on him either. I think he's one of the like top level of defensive big prospects that you can have. Like I think he is all defensive upside, like pretty cleanly. He held opponents to 43% shooting at the rim, like just kind of devastating numbers. That's like way lower than pretty much every major big that's come out of college in the past 5 years. I really buy his like coordination at his size. He had, like clocked in the same standing reach as Zach Edey at 9'7". And he can come out to hedge at the level. Like he won't be switching fully, but like anything short of that, I feel totally comfortable with him doing. Just he's really aware of his positioning, how far to go out from the basket. On offense, I think his touch isn't as bad as some people realize. Actually, he won't be shooting threes or like even free throws at a good level, but he was still 85th percentile in layups. So I think he can continue to like punish mismatches down there. He's was the best screener in college basketball. Just really fluid there too. Can like pass a little bit. I don't think he'll be a huge positive on the offensive end, but I think he can be around positive to slightly positive while being one of the best defensive players in the league.
So comparing him to the last sort of big hulking white drop shot blocking big in Walker Kessler, who had some similar, offensive limitations, I guess, but obviously not as good of a passer as Clingan because Kessler doesn't pass at all. So there's that there. But in terms of the defensive impact, and we saw Kessler have some limitations this season in the NBA, like where does Clingan beat him in that sort of an area?
Yeah, I was actually always kind of on the lower side of Kessler too. I was never crazy about his positioning and kind of his like footwork. Obviously, he's an incredible shot blocker with like rare hand-eye coordination. Well, I think Clingan is much more like fundamentally sound and is a little more scheme versatile for that reason, and that I can trust him to kind of not like sell out for blocks like I think Kessler does at times. I just think he's way more disciplined of a player. Again, yeah, the passing is a huge differentiator between the two. But I mean, if you had a Walker Kessler, you would be taking him top 5 in this draft also.
Yeah, I guess that is where we end up with, is like this draft, and the lack of top end quality does change our evaluation of what a pick number ends up meaning now. So we've heard these whispers and about this. Maybe the Hawks are looking at number 1, and Quinn Snyder's really interested in him going there. And I see Hawks people saying, well, if he comes in, he'd start immediately over Okongwu and over Capella. I'm not sure about that. I'm not. Look, okay, let's put it this way: is Clingan's best case scenario, where does it slide in like the Clint Capella? Like we saw Capella be a sub all-star for few years, never was quite that high level. Like, is Clingan's upside way higher than that? Is his upside Rudy Gobert? Is his like where do you think that is? Like, is he, if you took him one, will you be like, oh, we need to clear the decks and it's him and Jalen Johnson and we're ready to go?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I think his upside, I mean, you can't be Gobert and like however many time defensive player of the year, can it? Like, that's kind of unreasonable to put that on him, I think. But I think he has the outline of that. I think he is solid enough that I envision him being a top 5 rim protector for the next 10, 15 years. Yeah. I feel pretty comfortable in that. And then the offense, he won't be the same lob threat as Capella, but I think he'll still be effective. And like Connecticut didn't really have him like diving to the hoop like that. I think he has some like juice as a roller to the basket that wasn't quite shown. But yeah, I think he could be a part of like a really strong offense too. Just like, if not being the driving force behind that, I think he can grease the wheels for like a really high performing team.
Yeah, he's I don't know. He's just the sort of player where I go like, with the some of the offensive limitations and the spacing stuff where you've got to fit guys around him because he's probably not going to be a shooter. That to me, to be able to offset that, you don't have to be Rudy Gobert, but you got to be getting close to it. You got to be up there to have this absolute outlier, complete defensive package to me to be able to offset some of the lack of other stuff. Now, he could very easily, because this class is not going to be super strong, he could easily be the best player in this class by being a multi-time all-defensive team player. Like, he makes it 4 times, split between first and second team, and that is the most decorated player to come out of that class. I can completely see that being the case. But I also look at him and go, what is the actual top-end upside here? Like, you talk about Sarr not being the number 1 or number 2 on a championship team. I can't see how Clingan gets anywhere near that, but obviously you have him in a higher position to where I have Sarr. So can you see that level of importance of his defense being that important on a high level championship equity team?
Yeah, absolutely. I think he could be that level defender. I mean, I think it's still like unlikely, but top 20% outcome, I think he could be a top 2 player on the championship team for sure. Just his his ability to anchor, I think, a top 5 defense is pretty rare to find. And just if you're anchoring that level of defense, then you by de facto are like probably going to be a top 2 level player on a championship level team. You know, it's still a lot has to go right for him with his injury history. The touch has to hang in as like just okay on offense, if not a little bit better than that. But I think with his strong decision making too, he's just like a really like strong player you want to have out there. I think he can be a very high level contributor for a high level team. And like, I mean, he was dominant in college in the way that players usually have to be in order to be that level of player. So yeah, I wouldn't put that off the table.
He was dominant in college, but the man that you've got at number 1 dominated him in their matchup in the NCAA tournament, and that is Zach Edey, who is older. He's 22. He is 7'5". We know the size of Edey. We know the offensive dominance: 32 points per 40 minutes, 15 rebounds, 2.7 blocks. High usage player, good free throws, doesn't take threes. We saw him taking a bunch of threes in combine workouts. I think there is a slight chance he takes some, but I'm actually not banking on that. I just really worry that a lot of his production comes because of size, which, yes, you still have that size in the NBA, but it's also the level of competition. That insane usage level, 33%, is just, I don't think that's going to be anywhere close to what happens for him in the NBA. And I do worry that he's just not going to be able to move enough defensively to be able to be more than a, not a 30-minute a night player, but you've obviously got him at number 1. I am nowhere near that on Edey. And he is a player who is, you're not the only person I've seen have Edey at number 1, but I've also seen many people have him at like 35 or 40. And I've got him higher than that. I do have him in the first round. So Zach Edey is number 1. My number 1 strike against him is the defense, but it's also the age. Like, we are talking about a guy that's 3 years older than a lot of these other prospects coming out. Sell me on what you think it is here with Edey. Is it offensive upside? Is it offensive domination that you think puts him at number 1? Is it the fact that you think he can hold his own defensively, or could he be a positive defensively? What is it that makes you put him at the top of the heap?
Yeah, it's a combination of those things. I think there's a lot of avenues for him to be very dominant. I think, first of all, just like the interior scoring, he shot, crazy numbers, obviously, 80% shooting on 274 rim attempts. If you even have like a 2 standard deviation drop from that for both like volume and like percentage, you're still going to be an above average scorer. It's really hard for him to be a low post negative. I think obviously it takes some, like, if I'm going to put him number 1, you're expecting to build around him and like as a low post threat in some way. But I think he's absolutely that level of, especially if you're going to put single coverage on him. Like we saw Donovan Clingan struggle mightily against him. And I think very highly of Donovan Clingan's defensive abilities. So I think there are very few players in the entire NBA that you can put single coverage on him on, especially with his, like, he's really developed his passing a lot. So like he has double the assist rate of Zaccharie Risacher, right? Like, I mean, he can really move the ball, or like figured out how to move the ball to open shooters. Obviously he's getting triple team, so he has to. But I think his feel for the game has really evolved over his years too. On the defensive end, just flat out being his size, I think has inherent value, even if there's some scheme limitations where you can't go full switch with him. I actually think he moves a lot better in switch situations than he gets credit for. As far as no one's really expected to hang in as a big for a switch for more than a couple seconds. And I've like seen countless times of him, do that against at least college level talent. But I think his drop technique is decent. I think he was kind of taught to go over conservative because he had like very few fouls, because Purdue would have 0 shot at winning if he got in any foul trouble. But yeah, just like the statistical dominance is just like unprecedented too. Like Purdue was plus 42.5 points in that rating when he was on the court, compared to plus 2.6 when off. Like, these are just, I'm all about betting on outliers, right? And like the outliers are the ones that determine how the league evolves. That's like true. That's who we respond to. And like Zach, I don't know. He's not Shaq. I'm not saying he's Shaq, but if like Shaq came along, would you be complaining that he's not like seem versatile enough?
Yeah, if it's fair enough.
So yeah.
Okay, so you're talking statistical outliers, right? So like you've got Clingan at 3, you've got Edey at 1. I don't know who you've got at 2, but I'll take a guess, right? Because I want to talk statistical outliers. We're not going to cover this guy on this show, but do you have Reed Shepherd at 2? Because his statistics are the outlier. Like they look insane to me when you look at the outlier numbers. Like the steal numbers are through the roof, the 3-point shooting is through the roof. They are outliers. Is he at number 2 for you?
Yeah, I love Reed. He's number 5 for me, just because I'm more worried about his 2-point attempt volume was quite low, and just like his usage rate in general. But I think he's a very strong production bet. Yeah.
All right. So
actually, I have Holland number 2.
Who do you have at number 2?
Ron Holland.
Sorry. So we're in alignment on one finally. Yeah, I've got Ron Holland at 2 as well. To me, there's a lot of information or stuff coming out about Holland and moving him down. It can't be because of his play or his statistics. It's got to be other stuff, honestly, because I look at the numbers and I look at what he does and I go, surely not. Like, it doesn't make any sense. It's got to be something else that is causing this slide down the board. Is that how you're viewing that? Like, I don't understand it otherwise.
Yeah, I'm not sure what intel is going around about him, so it's like hard to fully comment on that. But just like statistically, what I saw on tape, I think this was the worst constructed G League Ignite team, like pretty easily. And the fact that he was able to hold his own, at least even somewhat on that, I think he showed a lot of like flashes of like high feel, even though he still made like typical like rookie mistakes for a young player. But just like having that level of usage, honestly, at his age, at a G League level, is like really impressive to me. And by his motor, by his like ability to just find ways to contribute, and his like rim pressure, I think will be really strong.
Yeah, I'm basically at that same spot now. We've got one more guy that we're going to talk about, and I sent you through my list, and one of the names that you came back to, this isn't the guy we're going to talk about. You said, hey, I'm way lower than you on Dalton Connect. Well, what? I got him at like 17. You're lower. So, okay, that's interesting, but we're not going to even cover that now. That was something else. But then another guy that I think I'm relatively low on, and you were like, no, I'm lower here too, is Zaccharie Risacher. You mentioned him earlier. You talked about the French guys earlier on in the show. There are people discussing him at number 1 or number 2. And I watch him play, and I see some of the stuff from him, not only just at JL Borg, but playing through the French national team and under 19 and all that sort of stuff. And sometimes you watch him and go, really? This guy, like, he's like the 5th best guy on this French team. Like, what are we talking about here? I don't trust the shot. I don't trust so much of this. But I thought I had him low. Like, I think I've got him at like 7 or something like that. But you must be trusting less of what you see with Risacher, because there are times when he puts up impressive-ish performances, but there are so many times where I'm just like, yeah, you go missing way too often here for me, and I don't buy a lot of this. And if it wasn't this level of class, I wouldn't have him in the lottery. Do you have him in the lottery?
No, he's a little outside the lottery for me. I think it's kind of preposterous to float him as a number 1 prospect. I mean,
same.
I see like people talking about like his floor is Trey Murphy III, and like he's just not nearly that level of shooter to me, or defender. I think I think his like on-ball defense is really good. Like, he's a good athlete in general, but I think his feel overall is like pretty mediocre, especially for someone you're taking that high. Like, a 7% assist rate is just like flat out awful for someone that has like still gets decent amount of touches. His handle is like subpar, and his shooting is just okay. Like, he shot 71% from the line. That was actually worse than Ron Holland shot. And like, I mean, it's still relevant that he played a relevant role for like an important like team in the French league. I think it would be, I don't think their assessment was wrong that he was like a useful role player for them, you know? But I just don't really see the upside. And I like changed my methodology a lot this year to value 3 things: production, feel, and athleticism, right? And I don't think he's going to grade out in the top 10 for any of those for this class for me, and maybe not in the top 15, except like maybe athleticism. But I just don't see him contributing that much on like a possession-to-possession basis. And so you're really counting on the shot making coming around.
Yeah.
Being like exceptional.
And I don't think it is. Like, I don't see that. Like, you're right. Like, he plays a role on a team that's solid in a strong enough league. But you talk about outliers, and we talked about that earlier. Like, I look at it and go, what's his thing? What's the thing that he's going to be? Oh, Risacher is a great driver. What a creator. He's an elite shooter. He's a great on-ball defender. He's a good help defender. I don't know. Like, I think he's okay at a lot of stuff, but he's wildly inconsistent. Is it just that, like, he looks the part? Like, he's the right size, he's the right position, he's the right age. He sort of looks like he should be doing those things, but he isn't. Like, so again, I feel like you're disagreeing that I've got him too high, but I also agree with you. Like, he is going too high. I've got him at like a 7 or 8, but I don't really know where to put him. And I keep getting these stages where I go, other guys I want to put ahead, and I go, yeah, but I don't know if they can shoot. And I go, but I don't know if he can shoot. I don't know anything about sort of where he fits as a player. He feels to me, like, correct me if I'm wrong on this matter, if you think I'm wrong, he just feels like someone who has a really high propensity to just sort of disappear. Not necessarily in the game, but sort of like just go, oh, what's he doing? Like, where is he? Oh, I haven't seen him. Not that he's made mistakes, but I just haven't seen him. He hasn't done anything for the last 5 minutes, and he's been on the court, but he hasn't touched it, or he hasn't done anything that makes you go, oh, that's interesting. He just sort of is there. And there's a value for someone being he's there player that doesn't make mistakes, but that's a guy you pick 20 or something, not a guy that you're thinking of, oh, he's the best player in this class. I don't see star upside, but you see it much less than me. Here's a question that I have for you around Risacher, but all these guys we've talked about, and Clingan, Edey, all these sort of players. We can talk back to last year's draft, which there were some insane takes about last year's draft a month into the season. People go, yeah, see how weak this draft is. And I go, bro, I think it's actually really strong. So, in terms of guys coming out of last year's draft, I also tweeted this the other day. Who do you think will be the lowest player of last year's draft who would go number 1 in this year's draft?
For me, or just like generally?
Just for you. Like, just thinking about the guys in last year's draft, who would be the worst player for you from last year's draft, who would be the number 1 pick in this year's draft?
Yeah, I mean, I'm generally really high on Zach Edey. I would take him. I think I would take Brandon Miller number 1. I would take Scoot, and honestly, maybe the Thompson twins also above him.
Yep.
All right. So
I agree with those. I agree with those.
Yeah.
Okay, let me bring to okay. So I agree with those. So you got Edey at 1. I've got Sarr at 1. We go to number 6, Anthony Black. I wasn't a big Anthony Black guy. I would take Sarr over Anthony Black. I'm assuming you would take Edey over Anthony Black, yes?
Yeah, for sure.
What about Bilal Coulibaly?
Yeah, I would take him over pretty much the rest of the guys I'll mention. I think he could be a decent number 1 even. I feel pretty strongly about him.
I think I would take Sarr over Bilal. But here's the question: what about Cam Whitmore? Where would you like? Because Whitmore obviously slid a lot last year. I thought he was relatively impressive. I think I would take Whitmore at number 1 for that star number 1 scoring offensive engine upside in this class. I would take Whitmore number 1 in this draft class. Where would you have him?
I've always been kind of on the lower side for Whitmore just because I really value passing a lot.
Yeah,
I think
he can't do that.
One of the worst passers I've ever seen.
Yep.
So I would have him lower. I think his like lack of passing and like peripheral vision in general, I think is like enough to remove star outcomes for me.
Well, that ties us back into Risacher because his assist-to-turnover ratio is horrible. It's like 0.6 or something. And while again we don't think he's a point forward, we don't expect him to be a point forward, but there's got to be some level of like care, I guess, with the ball, or either some level of care with the ball, or some level of doing something that's interesting to create. Like, I don't mind a player that's a high turnover player if he's pushing the boundaries and trying to get interesting things happening, but I feel like Risacher is not even doing that, and that's where I run into that problem with that lack of vision, or that lack of like just do something. I feel like he just doesn't do anything at the level that I need him to do it. Which is is that how would you characterize, I guess, Risacher? Like if you had to say like one phrase to sum up why you're low on him, what would it be?
Yeah, I mean, I just looked it up. I think he had more games under 10 points than he had above 10 points. Like, I think even the scoring is maybe not as what people planned, and that's like the main selling point for him. So I think he's just a pure like archetype play that is gone wrong, basically.
Yeah, okay. So look, I think what's handy for me in doing this sort of a show with this big boy is I look at this and I go, I had Risacher low, I had guys like Connect low, and I feel more comfortable about having them at that lower spot because, again, there is just such a wide range of opinions and outcomes on a lot of these players. There are so many different yeah, there are positives, but there are so many negatives as well that you can easily talk yourself into in many different directions. But Matt, it has been very enlightening to discuss this with you, for you to tell me how wrong I am on the big men and where I'm sitting with well, not maybe wrong. A lot of big men actually, Sarr, Clingan, Edey on this, and just different opinions on how these guys work out. Tell us what you have got cooking at the moment over on Swish Theory and stuff you've got coming out and that people should prioritize checking out.
Yeah, we have a new big board edition coming out sometime in the next couple weeks. Just keep an eye on at Swish Theory page and mine at Draft Pal. We'll have a lot of draft content coming, honestly. So yeah, just keep an eye open.
Go check out all the stuff over at Swish Theory, one of the best places you can find out NBA draft information. Matt, thanks again for coming on the show with me.
Yeah, thanks so much, Josh. Appreciate it.
And that will do it for the end of this show. It's always good to get these differing opinions. I will have a show tomorrow on my big board. I may even make some adjustments from here. But as you can see, there are people who have very different opinions. Edey, Clingan, way higher. Sarr down lower. There's just so many different ways to approach this draft that's going to make it really intriguing. It's going to make it hard to have full critiques of it because there's just so many ways that these prospects can be all over the shop, in my opinion, and in a lot of other people's opinions as well. And I always want to hear your opinion. So why don't you go and chuck the old thumb and leave your comments down below on the video. Am I wrong for having Edey in the 20s? Is Matt wrong for having him at number 1? Am I too low on Clingan? Is he too high? Am I too high on Sarr? Is he too high? Are we both wrong on Holland? Are we both wrong on Risacher? Let us know down in the comments below. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.